Welcome to Keyword Adventure. I'm Matt.
And I'm Kristen. Last time, we kind of left you hanging.
Well, we were hanging, and yeah, we left you hanging.
It's been a little bit since we've updated you on these episodes, eh?
Hey, a sailor's got a sail.
That is true. That's where we've been. We've been on the boat out in Florida, getting a little bit more sailing under our belts and having some new adventures down there, which we'll come up to soon.
Oh, yeah.
And then we got back to Missouri to get our garden going and kind of get caught up on life on land again.
So, with that said, we do want to finish up with our stories about Key West and our first year or season of sailing adventures.
This was the season where we really got to know Key West well. And we've been exploring Stock Island in the last episode. We
spent quite a bit of time there.
Yeah, we had to take Eric to the hospital for something and experience what that was like. And last but not least, we had to figure out how to haul the boat out down there to do some repairs.
Got her fixed up right, though, and back in the water, and then safely back into the marina.
Yes, very true. And so this episode, where we left you was, we're really excited to tell you about something that is truly even more unique to Key West and the Florida Keys. Did you know that, in a sense, they are their own sovereign nation? It's mostly in a spiritual sense, but they really do see themselves this way, and we're going to tell you about the history of it.
Well, and that's for good reason. Okay, so it's known as the Conch Republic, and that's also the Florida Keys.
Right.
What started as a secession of the city of Key West, Florida, eventually expanded to include all of the Florida Keys. And this really surrounded and was started by a roadblock, a checkpoint initially, and it created a massive traffic jam.
So you have to think back to the 1980s, late 70s, early 80s in the Keys and South Florida in general. And this was an era where there was a lot of movement of people coming on boats up from Cuba and some other places. There was a lot of drug running down in this area too. And so the federal government put Border Patrol on Highway 1 at Florida City, which is the last city on the mainland end of Florida before you get to the Keys. And they were stopping everybody to search cars for people and for drugs.
That meant you went down there as a tourist and you came back through what would have been like customs.
Right.
Questions, you would have all gotten out of the car. Everything that you would have brought with you would have been taken apart and searched.
Yeah.
Your car would have been taken apart and searched. And then you get to go clean that up and continue your trip.
Or if you're a resident of the Keys and you go back up to mainland Florida for something, every time you try to come back home. And this was causing roadblocks that were taking hours. They stretched for 17 miles at one point because it was taking so long.
17 miles of traffic.
Right.
Eastern Airlines became known as the only airline to fly travelers from Key West to Miami.
Yeah, no, it was really crazy. And I know the federal government was thinking that they were doing the right thing, but it was also causing tour in this area to completely come to a halt. And for the Keys, that's their lifeblood in a lot of ways.
So they said, if you're going to treat us like a different country, we're going to become a different country.
And that's where April 23rd of 1982 came in.
That's right. They didn't one day, actually it was on one day. But anyway, it's Key West. Eventually, city council members tried to stop the roadblocks and searches by taking a variety of measures. They issued complaints to the federal government, attempted to get court injunctions against the roadblocks.
Everything failed. Yeah. And so Mayor Dennis Wardlow, in a statement of protest, declared their independence on April 23rd. They had a lot of media attention around the world from this happening at the time. So it actually happened on the court steps that they walked out after their last failed attempt to get these roadblocks removed. And the media asked him, well, what are you going to do now? He said, we're going to go home and we're going to secede.
We'll secede where the courts failed.
Right.
And that's kind of funny, especially in this day and time.
So after they declared this, he was designated as Prime Minister of the territory, and it was given the name the Conch Republic. This is spelled C-O-N-C-H, like the snail that people eat, conch fritters. The people are known as Conch, and they actually have their own national anthem as well.
Well, and all of this hoopla, it did create a lot of publicity for the area, which was great. And it wasn't long until the roadblocks had been removed. But in the meantime, oh my, was there just a little bit of hilarity, including a naval battle.
It involved raising the conch flag over the courthouse, but also over a schooner called Western Union. So really quickly, to set the stage of what this schooner looks like, Schooner Western Union, it was built in Key West in 1939. It is a wooden ship. It was made to maintain the communication links between Florida cities, Caribbean islands, and South America. So in its lifespan of working this way to check and repair the signal cables from Key West to Cuba, as well as lay undersea telegraph cables throughout the entire Caribbean, it had laid more than 30,000 miles of undersea telegraph cable. It was constructed of Cayman mahogany and longleaf yellow pine from Florida. She's had an extremely varied life. She's gone everywhere from the Florida Keys all through the Caribbean to New York City. And she's also made her Hollywood debut in the movie Amistad. If you have seen that before, it was a 1997 film by Steven Spielberg. That's the boat that we're talking about here. She was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1984, and she's actually run day sails for many years out of Key West. After about 70 years, though, she needed a lot of overhaul. That lasted about 3 years until she again failed in 2014 and repairs began. So ever since then, she's moved between Tarpon Springs and now back in Key West. And there's a nonprofit that's built around restoring her in the classically historic way that she was built. 130 feet long, 2 masts and 5 sails. You can imagine what this boat looked like sailing out of the Key West harbor towards the unsuspecting Coast Guard cutter. So here we go. What did the Battle of the Conch Republic look like?
On April 23rd, the Conch Republic flag was raised over City Hall, and the 130-foot wooden schooner Western Union, under the command of Captain John Krause, went forth into the harbor and attacked the 210-foot U.S. Coast Guard cutter Diligence with water balloons, conch fritters, and stale Cuban bread. And thus commenced the great battle of the Conch Republic. The Diligence fought back with fire hoses. Prime Minister Wardlow surrendered and demanded foreign aid from the United States, which they are still waiting for. The roadblock was quietly removed, and the glorious Conch Republic was born.
You can find a lot of this information on conchrepublic.com, and there's another one called kingofconch.com, I think, where we found it. And they have a really good, on the conchrepublic.com, they have a really good footnote about this, basically declaring this was not a revolution against the U.S., rather it was a protest, just because the people of the Florida Keys had really been alienated as Americans and been cut off from the rest of the country. So they decided to play on it. They also see the Coast Guard as good friends.
Very good friends. And they were never considered an enemy. And Diligence, which was the Coast Guard cutter, was merely just a target of opportunity. Let no one ever come to understand that the impression of the U.S. Coast Guard has ever been considered anything but a good friend.
Yeah, and you've got to imagine, too, that this is a small island, and even if the military base has fences around it, everybody kind of knows everybody, so this was all in good humor.
Yes. The Conch Republic exists as a sovereign state of mind, which signifies our vision of America, which they are proud to be a part of. Mm-hmm. Now, let's be clear, this is from the conchrepublic.com.
Yeah.
You can find more information there. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Please check this party out.
Yes, and party it is. Now, like I said, it has been built over the almost 40 years that this has been going on. It's gone from a week-long celebration stretched out to 2 weeks, and there's everything from drag races to drag queens to great food, incredible wine, fireworks, the boat parade. It goes on. I mean, it's family-friendly and plenty of crazy stuff going on. So that's the last couple of weeks of April. Check it out. It's there.
And let's mention again that family friendly typically in Key West happens before sunset. After sunset,
things are open.
It's probably a good time to go ahead and tuck in.
A lot of pub crawls.
Okay, so on that note, we are going to start talking a little bit about our escape from Key West.
Yes, we finally got to splash the boat back in the water. This was after we'd had that through-hole leak.
We wanted to do a big systems and safety review just because this had shown that there were some, older systems on the boat that we really needed to go through. So we went through all of our radios, all of our standing rigging. We inspected all of so the standing rigging is the stuff that keeps the mast up and that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
the wires that you see from the deck to the top of the mast.
That's right. So you wanted to go through and inspect those, and we really wanted to, especially after being hauled out, that can sometimes put weird forces on things.
True.
So we went through the boat from top to bottom to make sure she was in fine fiddle condition.
Fine fiddle condition. She looked good. Everything was checking out, and we weren't sinking anymore, which was also fantastic.
Yes. Yes. So we cleaned her bottom, which is always interesting.
And how do you do that?
Well, it's funny you should ask. First, you send Kristen down,
Oh my. Yeah, okay. All right. Let's back this up a little bit.
and then she sees something in the water that scares her, and then she comes up and says, "Okay, it's your turn."
That's
And
kind
then
of
I go down and finish the
That's
job.
kind of true. I spent a couple of hours down there. So we did this in the marina where we were staying. And you have to understand, you're on scuba doing this. And there are a lot of sailors who hate cleaning the bottom of the boat, mostly because of the stuff that comes off the bottom of the boat. But the little things that come off attract the bigger things that eat them, which then attracts the bigger things that eat those. And so you're down there thinking you're one of the bigger things down there until you see a shadow that tells you that you're not. And so in this marina, it was very clear water that day.
Very clear.
Very calm. Did this on purpose. We were waiting for a time where the sand wasn't stirred up, making the water foggy. And I go in with my scuba gear on. I'm ready to do this. And I learned from a friend of mine long ago that you don't clean the bottom of the boat without covering your head with something.
Yes, you need to cover any opening in your head, i.e. nose, ears, mouth, eyes.
Yeah,
So the eyes and nose are typically covered by your scuba mask.
right.
Your mouth has a mouthpiece in it, but your ears are something that a lot of people will forget. And so the big thing there is you need a hood
Yeah, or a buff. I used a buff that day.
or a
and it
buff,
was-
something to act as a filter between your ear canal and the little creepy crawlies that are out there and around.
Yeah, no, and honestly, this guy's story was that he was cleaning the bottom of his boat and he was scraping along, and like a little tiny shrimp crustacean type thing shot out of the stuff he had scraped, and it went straight into his ear canal. And it took him not long to jump out of the water and start taking care of that. So that was impressionable. So I was down there scraping the bottom of the boat, and we realized, as we've talked about before, that you see some nurse sharks, and that's okay. You see some tarpon, and that's okay. You even see some barracuda, and I'm not too worried about them.
And let's be clear, the tarpon are huge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're as big as me. I'm 5'6". They're easily as big as me. And so what I realized then, a day or two after I had started cleaning, was that on the other side of the dock from where we were was a deeper channel. And that's where the bull sharks would come through to pick up what the fishermen were throwing out. Yay! So I sent Matt in instead.
And let's be clear, the fishermen weren't back in yet.
No.
I think what she saw was a tarpon.
Yes.
And
I still didn't like it.
the sharks, they'll follow the fishing boats in,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of funny. And there are a lot of very friendly nurse sharks that live at the marina.
Oh,
and they're not a
they-
problem.
They fight with the pelicans over the stuff that's being cleaned.
The big old
And
bull sharks, though.
That was different.
Keep your eyes open.
To see that. No, that was, yeah. So I was watching my oxygen on my tank just dwindle as I'm hyperventilating down there. And I got about, I don't know, a third of the boat done. So,
I really had no problem with it. I felt really safe, so I just went ahead and went down and finished the job.
because
Now-
you're not as sweet as me. They didn't really want you.
The boat's all ready. This time we needed to make sure the crew was all ready. We hadn't gotten as much sailing in Key West as what we'd wanted, but we had a
Yeah.
little bit of and I don't want to call it a schedule, but we had a couple of goals in mind. And so we were going to be heading north, and we were looking for a good weather window to do that.
Yeah.
And we still use predict wind, and that is a good way of getting you a nice big general forecast of what your wind and waves are going to be like.
Yeah.
And
It's not 100%.
it's never 100%.
Right.
That said, we ended up with beautiful weather headed north.
Yes, we did.
That was the fun kind of sailing.
Well, and you have a term for that. What is it?
It's champagne sailing. So the whole idea here is you can set your champagne glass down on the deck or wherever your tabletop is
Right.
in your on your yacht, and you can sail along comfortably in seas that would not spill a drop of that champagne.
True. Yes, and then the only thing you have to adjust is your heel.
That's it.
And that's all right. But yes, it was beautiful. And this was good for me because as somebody who I do, as I've mentioned before, I do get seasick. I know that part of that is chalked up to my own anxiousness about certain things. And I realize that, especially going out at night, I love it. And I know that subconsciously there's something that gets me a little bit about it. And so to have one of these evenings where it was just calm and beautiful and the wind was perfect, the stars were out, it couldn't have been a better experience.
And once again, we time this so that we leave during daylight and we clear out of the north end of the Key West Channel.
Right.
And then we're out in open water for the majority of our sail home.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we get in close, it's daylight again. So we cross that midnight dark time of the day. And then when we approach land again, it's daylight.
Yeah, it's really lovely. And it's a different experience to be out there. We're asked quite often, what is it like to be in a place where you can't see land? And then it's nighttime and you can't see land. And what is it like? And that is so variable. It's hard to answer that question sometimes.
I personally find it, and it's different for everybody.
Right.
I find it as a great way because there is no digital connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been known to listen to audiobooks because they keep my mind going whenever there's not a lot else going on.
Yeah, if you need an audiobook consultant or connoisseur, this is the guy. He's listened to hundreds. And it started back in the lawn care days when you didn't want to just listen to music on a mower all day. So he started listening to books.
Yep. And it helped keep my mind going where sometimes music would make me drift off.
Yeah. So this is a great opportunity to pick up the book that you've been, whether physically or listening to it, pick up a book that you've been wanting to read or whatever your thing might be.
Now, we are not sponsored by Audible, but if you're listening Audible, we'd love to be.
Audio, wherever you are.
That's it. But it's exactly it, wherever you are. And we were crossing an ocean crossing the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
And that was a really nice tool. So anyway, sailing north, you basically, for us on this crossing, we set our sails. We had a really nice kind of mostly downwind sail.
Mm-hmm.
So the wind was behind us, the seas were behind us. So you have a really gentle, easy motion with the boat. And I want to say we were doing a good 5 knots.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And that means that we're covering ground really well and the boat feels nice and stable. And it just makes for a beautiful passage.
Mm-hmm.
A
It sure
beautiful
does.
passage.
Yep.
Sunrise came out and we were able to just enjoy that. And then, it was like, okay, well, let's make some breakfast. And everybody was up
Yeah.
and rested and feeling good. And that was a major difference between our first passage and this one.
Well, and again, one of the things that we do before a passage is do our best to get food ready.
Yes.
Because in case the circumstances change or things aren't quite as predicted, it's nice to have some, say, peanut butter sandwiches ready to go for dinner if things are really rough suddenly and you don't want to be down below cooking a warm meal. And snacks that you can grab and just keep up top so you don't have to send somebody up and down if it's maybe a little bouncier, choppier out there than you expected. And this was one of those sails where you could have done anything. I think we did make dinner that night and kind of save the quick grab food for other things.
Yeah, we made dinner that night and we made breakfast that morning. I remember making pancakes.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And
Yep.
that was a big fun thing, especially for Eric.
Yeah.
He loves having pancakes and he really enjoys sitting up in the cockpit and eating.
He does.
And the ability to sit up there and everybody be comfortable. And you have to remember, when we're in the cockpit, everybody is clipped into harnesses.
Mm-hmm.
And that's clipped into our jack line. Our jack line's that safety line that runs from the front of the boat all the way to the back.
Yeah.
And it helps keep us connected to the boat. So it really lessens the chances of somebody falling overboard.
Right. And that experience you're describing goes back to some of what we've talked about that inspired this originally was seeing Eric in different situations, different environments, and one of the things that always calmed him down if he needed it, brought him peace, brought him enjoyment, was being outside. And time and again, even when we're here back at home in Missouri,
yeah.
we see him want to eat outside. He loves to go out on the patio when it's not 100 degrees out there and eat breakfast. And it's the most peaceful, wonderful thing. And it transferred to the sailboat. It happens when we're in the RV. And it just goes to show, in my opinion, how important having some outdoor and nature connection time is.
Yes, it definitely centers him and sets him up for a much happier afternoon.
Yeah, so our sail went great. We are seeing Fort Myers in the distance.
That's
and
right. We
it's-
came in and we actually sailed all the way back up to Burnt Store this time.
We did.
And instead of stopping at Fort Myers, so we continued up and went through the Boca Grande Pass, which is between Captiva and Cayo Costa, and into Charlotte Harbor. And once you cross into that pass and into Charlotte Harbor, the first thing you see out there on that horizon is Burnt Store Marina.
Yeah, that's right. So we've really kind of come full circle
Yeah.
on this trip. We came back through Boca Pass, like you said, and this was that really deep pass that we anchored next to on our first night.
And this was very much our home grounds. This
Right.
is where we learned to sail. This is where we went out the first times. This was a return to the known.
Yeah.
It was something that we didn't even notice we would miss until we were there, but the water doesn't have any tidal swell to it. So the swells died down immediately, and it's like sailing across the lake, and you realize exactly how calm it is back
Right.
there.
Yeah. Well,
It's
and
shallow.
And it is shallow, yeah. Well, and that's until another season when we get into the Bahamas. Then suddenly Charlotte Harbor's not so shallow.
It's not that bad, yeah.
But yes, we got into Burnt Store, and in addition to that, talking about familiar places are the familiar faces, and it's nice to see some of those people that are willing to catch lines for you when you're coming in and welcome you back. And that
They're
was
excited to hear about your trip.
yeah, that was really nice. So I definitely appreciate them very much at Burnt Store.
They have done a great job over the years.
Yeah. So we are coming in now because of what is dubbed hurricane season.
Yes. So what hurricane season is, and it's now changed as of the recording of this, it now starts May 15th.
Right. 2 weeks earlier than previously.
Before that, it started back on June 1st. And hurricane season is a time of year running from June 1st until November 1st that the heavier named storms are more likely.
Yes.
And hurricane season is also known as, for the insurance companies, as we don't cover that.
Isn't that the
So
truth?
you need to be in either a hurricane safe marina or you need to be north of a certain latitude
Right.
or
Or you need a
to
different
be-
insurance carrier than
Yeah.
we have.
you need to be on the hard.
Yeah. They don't really want you to stay on the islands in the Bahamas, for example, during peak hurricane season. That's not their favorite.
No, and the whole thing is if your boat is hit in a named storm and damage is done, you're on the hook for it. They will not cover it.
Yeah. If you have an opportunity to move your boat when you can, then it's your responsibility to do that. And we learned this season, actually, number one, check what your coverage is when you purchase it. Because originally for us, they covered all of the US plus the Bahamas plus the Caribbean. And that was more expensive than what we needed.
Yes.
We only needed Florida.
And you can buy just Florida.
You can. And so you can also change it as you go, which was a big education moment here. So we changed it to just be insured in Florida since that was where we were going to be. And then once you actually take it out off the water to store it for the season, you call them and tell them it's on land. You give them the name of the boat storage place. And if they're a certified hurricane safe marina by that insurance company, you get a huge discount.
And that becomes a big savings.
Yeah.
And in our case, we found one that does offer hurricane tie downs. It is very friendly with our insurance company. And so that's that's our plan for hurricane season is generally bring the boat out of the water, store it on the ground. And it also gives us a chance to work on This made us, the through hole leaking in Key West made us identify that, hey, maybe we should replace the rest of the older through holes.
Right.
And that's what we've done.
Yeah. There are a lot of sailors out there who might not agree with us on this one, and they stay in areas that are higher hurricane risk zones. They love traveling in the Bahamas during the summer. That's their time to do it.
Because it's not crowded. You can get in and out of places without rental boats running you down.
So it's just a matter of your own risk management and assessment. And you see people sometimes who are scrambling if there's a storm heading straight towards them, that if they can tell where it's going to go, they're either trying to go south or go north to get out of the zone, or they're figuring out where they can tuck into a hurricane hole and strap down for a ride. And we're just not in a place to do that.
That's right.
So to each their own, and we wish them the best, but this was our plan.
That's right. So we're going to bring her out, strip the sails, sail bags, all the coverings off the deck. We're going to put the dinghy on the deck, deflate it, store it. And then we actually install a land-based AC unit on our boat so that it keeps the humidity down inside and the interior a little bit cooler while we are away. And this prevents mold.
That's true. Less cleanup when you come back.
We purge and flush the tanks. We top off the diesel tanks so they don't get any condensation moisture inside there. So we keep water out of our tanks, which is good.
Yeah.
And we even use damp rid to go ahead and cut down on humidity in places where the air conditioning and fans just might not reach.
Sure. And it doesn't hurt to put out some of those little ant houses, things like that, because even though your boat's not technically touching the ground, it's on stands, and then it also has straps that attach to the ground, and ants are very opportunistic.
Yes.
So are roaches.
And the keel sits on blocks on the ground.
Yeah.
So we got iguanas that came up and inspected the cockpit, and we had a few frogs around, but it happened.
It does. So the laundry list of things to do when you're going on land and storing it for a while is pretty long. You're definitely summarizing it quickly, because it just takes a while to get everything done. And especially then you add hot temperatures to that, and you're sweating through all this too.
And I was fortunate enough to have my brother and dad help me do this. Kristen and Eric, Kristen, she braved, I still, to this day, don't know how she did it, but she took off and headed north with a couple of gassy dogs.
Oh my.
And Eric, and she did the 2-day drive by herself back north while I got the boat out and hauled it and did all that.
Well, and I mean, recognition where it's due. Honestly, you guys had a lot of work cut out for you. And yes, 2 days driving. The story was, this is when our dog April, she had just entered into congestive heart failure. And so she was still getting her medications right. And this was upsetting her stomach. And so that was part of the adventure of my drive back with a small child and 2 dogs, was having to stop every couple of hours to get her out. But we did it. And Eric was a helper. Man, we stayed at a hotel. There's nothing like the feeling of being a chaotic hot mess coming into the hotel at 10 o'clock at night with 2 insane dogs, a tired kid, and an armload of bags strapped to you, and just wanting to check in. And the look on the person's face when you come in, they're pretty much just wanting to get you out of the way.
That's it. That's all they really need. Get you out of the way.
Yeah, and it was good for us to get home, but it is strange to go different directions at that point when I know there's so much work to do still on the boat.
That's right. And there was a lot of work to be done. And I went out, I had some fun for my 40th birthday. We did a little pirate sailing with me and a few of my very good friends.
Yeah.
And we did some blue water sailing and fishing and came back. And then my brother did help. My brother and dad helped to get the boat out of the water on the hard, covered in suncloth to keep her cool, protected. And then I flew home.
Right.
It all happened really fast.
It happened really fast. And this was pre-COVID.
This was all pre-COVID, yes.
So flying home then was no big deal, right? It was just kind of normal.
It's just a regular thing. Now, I did have to be pretty careful about what I carried home with me. I almost brought my sailing knife home, which would have been bad.
Yeah, that would have been a little bit disappointing, huh?
So at this point, I'd really like to do a season recap.
Okay.
And, we learned a lot during this season. This was our first season with Moondragon.
Yeah.
This was our first season sailing as a family.
Right.
This was our first season on a 47-foot boat.
This is our first season taking dogs with us on something like this.
This is our first season taking dogs on a sailboat.
Yeah.
And it was their first season sailing too.
Yeah, no kidding. There were a lot of learning moments.
Yeah, I mean, this was our first year docking our new boat, anchoring our new boat,
Falling off of our new boat. And
falling
getting
off
back
the
on.
new boat, yeah. Cleaning the bottom to, facing adversity in emergency situations
Yeah.
or, the
Challenges.
world's slowest
Yeah.
leak.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Still, when you see water in the boat and it's not supposed to be in that locker, then it kind of makes your heart rate go up.
Going to an ER in a different town than your hometown.
That's right. Finding the medical help.
Yeah.
So basically, one of the biggest things that you can come away from a season like this is it was an adventure. And we had a lot of fun with it because we embraced that.
Yeah.
From having friends and family down to visit one after another,
Yeah.
to, setting out on our first big blue water sail and having to turn around because the weather was not what was predicted. The waves were way bigger than what was predicted.
Oh, man.
And it was just beating us up. That was a big learning curve.
Yes, it really was. And there were a lot of really bright moments too. I mean, it's, there's the scale of fun to a lot of people where 0 is easy fun and level 5 is fun that's really hard when it's happening, but you look back at it and go, man, that was awesome. And there was every spectrum of fun on that scale in this trip. And, I think some of my favorite moments were seeing what Eric would come up with, honestly, as far as his phrases of let's get windy and bye-bye pants.
So every time we would sail away from land or away from a marina, and it's very hot in Florida.
Yeah.
We would let Eric strip down to his boxer shorts.
Right.
And
he'd say, bye-bye pants.
that's what he did. He'd be in his little boxer briefs running around, and that was his happy thing.
Yeah. Seeing the dog, notice a dolphin for the first time ever.
I'll never forget the look on her face.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
What was that?
Oh, man. Watching Marley bounce when he learned what a hatch was.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. He's our other little dog, and
They've seen Marley before.
Okay, he's a character, but he doesn't pay close attention, and he stepped right through a hatch. And I didn't know he was in the boat because originally he wasn't. I was down there making lunch, and all of a sudden he comes out of the aft cabin, and it was kind of like, Marley, what are you doing in here? And I later learned he had fallen through the hatch.
So that's another good reason to have a PFD on your dog. It's padding.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well,
No
even
kidding.
like this was a good learning thing. So we took PFDs down there that we used on the river back home.
Yep.
And they were a little bit much. The dogs kept overheating. And so we searched and found some PFDs, which a life vest for your dog, that were made from neoprene that could get wet and they help keep them cool. And
Yeah.
that was a big, lights
Yeah.
on moment. Instantly, they became more comfortable. And that, it's those little things were one of the many learning parts of the learning process that we went through.
Well, and I remember we talked pretty extensively about pet PFDs and that kind of thing. We can link
Yes.
back to that. I'll put that in notes. We can link back to that episode so that people can, if they're interested, listen to that again.
We did a big talk about safety for us.
Right.
We talked about anchoring and learning all the challenges.
Yeah.
And
looking back then, what do you think? Because there's a split here where, yes, we started this traveling, adventuring lifestyle in this way with Eric in mind. But when we're honest, when we step back and look at it, we did it for ourselves too.
oh, we had a lot of fun.
Yeah. And so looking back then for Eric, what do you think his biggest pros and cons were?
I think Eric really learned to entertain himself very well without television and without an iPad many times.
Yeah.
On this trip, I really saw Eric's imagination take off. We had a box of toys for him.
Right.
And it included these little multicolored discs because we were looking at, or squares, because we were looking at redoing the foam flooring in our cockpit. And so they sent us all of these samples.
Oh, yeah.
And he played with those.
There were probably
nonstop.
20 little rectangles.
Yeah, and he
Yeah.
would sort them and count them and put them over here, and he would
It
use them
became
as
play
money or
and
food.
yeah.
And so on this, I got to see his imagination really grow.
Yeah.
And him learn to entertain himself and roll with the punches, because he was also sitting down below in the cockpit floor while we were in the salon floor, and was sliding around on his blanket, and that was his game, was sliding back and forth in the
When
galley
she's
floor
bobbing.
while we were
Yeah.
going from one side to the other. And he thought that was the biggest fun, and
He did.
he embraced it from the get-go. We
Yeah.
also learned some of his limits.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I noticed too was that when it mattered, he understood when to really listen and follow directions.
Yes.
That moment where you say, sit down now, and taking that less as a harsh demand and more as I need to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And he learned how to do that better without a lot of protest about it.
Yes. He really did.
Not
And
taking it personally, I think is what I'm meaning.
a lot of kids struggle with that when to listen point of the day.
Yeah.
And this was something that he picked up on, and it stuck.
Yeah, he's done really well with it. I think as far as things that were harder for him, one of the things, if I'm guessing, that is not enjoyable for him on the boat is that access to things like lights and, turning things on and off, getting up to windows and stuff is higher. He's still a short kid, you know what I mean? And so reaching those things and having control in that way to turn the lights on in his own area, or if he's going to the bathroom somewhere, he doesn't necessarily want to walk into the dark cabin in the middle of the night. So he wants one of us to go in and turn the lights on for him since he can't do it. And so I haven't come up with a solution for that just yet, but I've thought about that. I mean, he's growing. He's so close to reaching some of them, but having more of that independence in that way was different than being at home.
We've all gotten to learn and grow quite a bit. What's next for our fearless adventurers? Well, you're just going to find out next week. And I do mean next week. We are actually going to start publishing again on a schedule.
We're back.
And look out, because we're also going to try putting these on YouTube.
Yes.
So if you're a YouTube subscriber, check out Keyword Adventure.
Right.
I'm going to have a link in this description to be able to click, and you can subscribe and get notifications that way. So if you like to listen and watch on YouTube, we're going to have pictures and maybe short little videos on there, but most of it is going to be played right over the top of our podcast.
Yeah, we figured we'd start simple but make it visual. And season 3 is where we're going to pick up next time. So in the meantime, thank you for listening. Remember to like, subscribe, and please share with your friends. That's really important to helping us grow this whole community that we're building here. And check out keywordadventure.com.
Thanks for listening. I'm Matt.
And I'm Kristen.
And remember, when life throws you a challenge, the keyword is adventure.